Welcome everyone to the Awesome People Talking podcast, where awesome people talk to me, your host, Braden Carlisle. This week we have an awesome magician. He's going through and he's teaching every trick in the book on penguinmagic.com. Ladies and gentlemen, Dan Harlan. Well, thanks again, Dan, for agreeing to be on the show. And I just want to talk with you a little bit about making that move when you're a younger magician, growing up and trying to practice, and making the move from hobbyist to part-time, professional, even professional.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah. You want me to tell you a little bit about what I did to make that move?
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Sure, because it's going to be a little different for everybody, but I think it's good to learn, from anybody that's had a successful experience, what their steps were. Mine were pretty simple in that when I was, I started in magic when I was about 9, and by the time I was 10, I was putting together acts to perform, not to be paid. I wasn't being paid to do anything, but I would enter a talent show here and there, give some free shows to friends, maybe work a couple of free shows out at libraries or nursing homes or things like that, just to get some experience. And then it wasn't until I was, I would say 13 or so, that I started to charge for anything. And I would maybe pick up, 3 or 4 birthday party shows. And it was for kids that were about my same age or a little bit younger. So I was 13, they might be up to 10 years old. And, and only charging, back then I was maybe getting $20 a show for those first couple of shows. Actually, my first show, I remember I got 40 cents. It was one of the, it was a show when I was 10 or 11 years old for 4 of my friends. I charged them 10 cents a piece.
Awesome.
It was just kind of a cute thing to do.
Right.
But so I was starting to get a little bit of money at birthday party shows, and then I also hosted a show in my basement to raise money for the Muscular Dystrophy Association. So I did a charity event and charged people for that, but then all of that money was donated to charity. But it also gave me some experience on, could I advertise a show and do it? And of course I didn't have to get much of a response, and it was mostly through my friends or my parents' co-workers and things like that. So we maybe had 20 people come in and watch the show, and that was great. And then I got a gig at doing restaurant walk-around magic, and I was 13 years old, and that one was just, we happened to be out at a nice restaurant with my parents, and my parents knew the manager, and so they asked me to do some tricks for him, and he said, that's great, and I said, well, I can do this, tableside, and so that's how that happened. So that was just by chance. But then very shortly after that, I was working out my stuff doing tableside magic. And very shortly after that, I started to actually charge for my shows because I was able to hand out more business cards to people. And then I would put together more public shows. And this is the thing that I learned about that. If you're going to organize a public show, always attach it to a charity, but do a split. Do a split for the charity. Okay, so it's to raise money for the charity, but you take a percentage for your work and you donate the rest of the proceeds to them. So a fair split is 50-50, but you can take less if you want to. It really depends on how you want to do it. But then I've actually found that the absolute best way to do it is to organize a public show and sell advertising in a program for the show.
Right.
Okay, so whatever it is, describe the show, put in some publicity photos of you, that kind of stuff. Hire a juggler or somebody else to fill out the show, and then just sell some ads in the program. And the ad revenue goes to the charity. So when you're going around selling the ad space to local businesses, that's what you tell them. You say, this ad revenue goes to support this charity.
Right.
So then your ticket sales get split between you and the charity as well. It's that way you're not losing out as much money. You can do a better house split that way. You could take about 70-30, however you want to do it, right? And still raise some good money for the charity.
Of course.
And typically you want to also make that like a big holiday event. So do it around Christmas time, or if you're into it, do it around Halloween, whatever you want to do. So that's how it started for me. But then that was all before I was 18, before I left home and had to really make money on my own. Right. So I was just I was just making a little bit to support my hobby. And when I left home, I became a full-time graphic designer.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my profession, but I was still a part-time magician. So I was making a little bit of money doing magic and a lot more money doing graphic design.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a real job. But then as I became more popular as a magician, I started making more money doing magic and the same amount of money, that I was as a graphic designer. But I had less time to focus on that. So since I was making a double income, I started saving. I saved enough money that I had a year's worth of saving that I didn't ever have to work for an entire year. I could just focus on magic, and I wouldn't have to make any money at magic anyway for that year. But I was already making money, but I had a cushion. And I think that's really important because you just don't know, how popular it's going to be. But at that point when I'd saved up, I told my boss, I said, I'm going to be leaving. I'm going full time into magic. He wished me well, and I took off from there. And there have been hard years and there have been easy years. But if you really love it and you can't think of yourself doing anything else,
Mm-hmm.
I say you got to go for it, but go for it sensibly. Make sure that you're prepared to do it.
Right. So you started very young doing magic, and
Well, not very young. I know some
yeah.
friends of mine that started
Oh,
younger,
of course.
but started learning when I was 9.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I started performing when I was 10, but I started really charging when I was 13.
Right.
Yeah,
And you got your restaurant gig
at
just
13.
purely by
Yep.
chance. You
Purely
said.
by chance. Yeah, that was the first one. Now, after that, I've had lots of other restaurant gigs that I got entirely on my own. And basically, I got them the same way that I got the one by chance. The one by chance was that my parents happened to know the manager and talked to
Gotcha.
the manager and said, let's show them some magic. But that is exactly the same approach that I used professionally. I would go into a restaurant and find out when the manager was going to be there. And if it's a restaurant that I liked, then that was what was interesting to me. It had to be a place that I liked, that was popular enough to support what I wanted to do for them. So I would find out when the manager was there, and then I would talk to the manager and I would say, "This is what I do for a living. I'm going to show you some magic, and this is what I can do, for your clientele." And you'll hear it from everybody that works restaurants. It's the same thing. Yes, you have to do good magic, but more than that, you have to let the manager understand that you are a liaison between the customers and the staff and any problems that might happen. So you can take care of any, if there's an issue at the table, you can let the servers know about it while they're busy with other customers. If there's a slowdown in service, if the kitchen is in the weeds, then you can take care of keeping people busy so they don't even notice that it's slowed down. If it's super, super busy, you can work in the bar area while people are waiting for tables, So that it's more important that you are doing, a customer service than a good show.
Right.
And yeah,
Yeah. I find it interesting because the way I got my first restaurant gig was kind of the same way, kind of like by chance. My parents didn't know the manager, but I was working there for about 6 months, and then I just decided to bring cards in one day and do some magic for the servers, and the manager was walking by, and he's like, "Wait, what? You do magic?"
yeah,
And
yeah.
then it kind of just went from there. He let me perform once a week during trivia night when everyone was kind of buying more beer anyways.
That's great. And however they're going to do it, just get your toe in the door because they will find out if you're any good at all. They'll find out, wow, this would also work on a Friday. This would also work on Saturday. This will work.
Right.
They'll start to turn the gears themselves.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And now you are doing something very interesting on Penguin Magic, along with hosting
I am.
live lectures. You're doing all the Tarbell courses. You're at
Yeah.
87 now? 88?
We just released what is it? We just released the first half of 87. So
Okay.
the second half is coming out next Friday.
So I want to talk with you a little bit about practicing.
Okay.
And obviously, you practice probably before you post all
A
these
lot.
videos online for everyone to see. How much would you say you practice just one single routine?
Single routine. Okay. I am to the point in my career and in this project that I approach it, very much like putting together television. Okay,
Right.
because I've worked behind the scenes in TV. So I'll gather all the props together. I'll make all the props and I will walk through the routine. Okay, so that I understand mechanically how it's supposed to go. And then I will think about what that looks like to the audience. I think that's the most important part, not to miss that. Okay, before you really put in a lot of effort, understand mechanically what you have to do, where the challenges are, what you have to show and what you have to hide. Then think about what it looks like to an audience, and in your mind figure out how you can accent the parts of it that you want the audience to remember. Mm-hmm. So think about that. That's the most important part, and how you can do that. And then during that, you'll understand that misdirection almost comes naturally. You know, the more they're focused on the interesting parts, the easier it will be for you to make what you're doing to accomplish it less interesting. So now you get that. Now you have to write out a script that makes that all make sense. And that also, you can't miss that part. How do you get from point A to point B to point C and all the way through the whole thing? And I've given lessons. Lesson 34 is the best one to look at as far as routining and script writing. So that all happens, right? So now I have a solid foundation without putting in any rehearsal at all. All I've done is walk through it. I haven't put any rehearsal at all. But all that has taken a long time. Each trick by itself, I focus all of my effort in making sure that it's going to play for an audience the way I visualize it in my mind, the way I want it to work out, and that mechanically there aren't going to be any difficulties that I can't overcome. At that point, I can now set up everything, and I can start doing run-throughs faster and faster and faster and better and better and better, and say the words more and more and more and more, and keep doing that over and over again. So, technically speaking, each one of those things is only going to be run for an hour to an hour and a half, speed practice, until I've got it. Because I have to do 6 to 8 new routines every week.
Right. And
that's a lot. That's a lot. So that's about 2 days. 6 to 8 of them is anywhere from 8 to 12 hours of actual rehearsal time.
Right.
And I only have 5 days to get that ready, because my Wednesday is taken up by hosting the Penguin Live. My Thursday, which is today, is my day off.
Thank you for coming to talk to me.
I know this is what I do on my day off. I still work, but I don't work. Doing the production for the show. Production for the show starts tomorrow, and that's where I gather everything together on Friday. I build everything over the weekend. I start my rehearsals on Sunday night through to Tuesday afternoon. So 2 full days, and then the show goes live.
That's awesome. That's a lot of work, but I've seen not all of them. There's 87. I've seen quite a few, and they're great quality. And
thanks.
You said 34 was script writing, and
it's technically routining a show, but I went into, you can't routine a show unless you've got routines.
Right.
So I went into it more from, let's start from routining a trick. Then how do we plug those tricks into a show? So that's all in there.
Yeah, about a year ago, maybe not quite a year, but I met Derek Hughes and Bill Hers, and they recommended to me, what is it called? Scripting Magic.
Yeah, Scripting Magic.
And
now,
I read that book, and I love that book. Do you have any thoughts about scripting? I mean, most working magicians script their tricks.
Yes. Now, when you get lesson 34 from me, there's also a PDF that I wrote many years ago before PDFs existed that is called More Than Meets the Eye. And More Than Meets the Eye talks about a lot of the same things in Scripting Magic, but from my perspective. So how you structure a script, how you write the beginning, the middle, and the end, how you hit these different points, what you do as a tour guide to guide people through the thing. So that's all in More Than Meets the Eye. That all comes with lesson 34. And I've been told that it's the best resource. Even Scripting Magic is a great book, but if you haven't read More Than Meets the Eye, if you haven't purchased lesson 34, I highly recommend that people get that and do the two things side by side. I mean, learn from the book and learn from what I've written from my experience. I came from the theater into magic, so I was on stage when I was 2, and like I said, I didn't learn magic until I was 9. So I had 7 years of experience in my formative years on stage, learning scripts, learning blocking, learning costuming, all of the things that prop building and all that stuff that's necessary. So before I became a magician, I already understood theater inherently from living it for so long.
Right. I find it really cool that a lot of magicians seem to have a theater background, or if they don't,
Yeah.
they at least recognize and take acting classes or improv classes somewhere.
Yeah, I also find it interesting that not enough magicians do that.
That's true too.
So
That's true too.
so you'll find a lot that do. You'll find a lot that do, and without exception, those magicians are generally the most memorable to an audience. They may not be the fanciest or the flashiest to other magicians, because theater is kind of a slow burn process.
Right.
You know, it's about getting an audience invested emotionally in something. So that's not something that you do with a quick trick. A lot of magicians want to see one quick trick, and that's it. Just fool me, and that's it. Because we see so much, right? But an audience actually wants to care. That's why they come to the show, So you have to figure out how to balance that, because too much theater kind of detracts from the shock and awe of magic, and too much quick flash razzle dazzle also detracts from the emotional experience.
Right.
So you got to find a way to work them together.
See, I have a hard time sometimes when I go to like open mic nights. 5 minutes, that's fine. But sometimes I go to new talent mics, and they give you 90 seconds, 2 minutes, and that's kind of hard to do something. So I'll just do the vanishing bottle or something like that. Just something.
And it's it's a great thing to work out how can you do a trick really fast and still have it have the connection and the impact. Right. What are the only beats that you have to hit? And that's part of my process too, is when I go through it and I decide mechanically how it's going to work and I run it as fast as I can run most tricks in under 30 seconds. But there's no way I'm going to do them that way for an audience.
Exactly.
So you got to figure out, well, what's the right amount of filler? And there are a lot of magicians that tell me that I do too much, too slow. Audiences don't say that.
Right.
Audiences always say, that's just amazing. It was fun. It was enjoyable. The whole ride is the experience to them. The moment of magic, they know that's going to happen.
Like that's the climax.
Right, exactly. So what else are they getting out of the experience? And like I said, other magicians watching other magicians, if there's anything more than just the trick, it's always like, oh, just get to the trick. But that's not how audiences are. Audiences aren't like that. They really, really want to be invested in some way. So, like I said, got to be a balance. Yeah. I was trying to find. Give me a second here because I wanted to get the number. I'm just going to volume 6 because we're talking about theater. And there it is. Lesson 83 is the other lesson. That is magic as theater, where I talk all about things that you need to know about theater, blocking and set construction and lighting and sound design and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's
all.
I didn't even know that was a lesson.
Yep, check it out. Yep, you'll love it. It's actually my favorite lesson that I've put together is lesson 83. There are no magic tricks in it, but it's put together in such an enjoyable way. I've actually had a couple of people write to me and say that they have converted it to audio and they just listen to it when they're driving their car. It's that good.
Those are my favorite lectures on Penguin too. I loved Murray Sawchuck. I loved the great Kaplan, just because after the tricks, there's fun theory, and then Kaplan talked about his sound, sound equipment, and that was fun.
Yep. Yeah, I love it too. I think that's very, very important, especially for creative magicians, because then you realize that not only is it okay to be inspired, but you now understand you put a lot of work and a lot of effort into it, but you eventually have something that's so unique. You know,
like Matt King's show. I've seen it so many times, but everything just fits together, payoff after payoff at the end.
That's right.
It's great.
And I'll tell you, Matt King is probably my favorite magician out of all magicians, to be honest with you. And you probably had a similar experience as the way I did. When I first saw his show, it felt spontaneous. It felt like he was ad-libbing. It felt like he was in the moment, and he was coming up with stuff, right?
Yeah.
Then you go back and you see his show again, and you're like, that's exactly the same ad-lib in the exact. You're like, he is a master.
He is.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a show he's doing in April, and I can't wait.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love watching his show again and again and again. Even if you understand that, even if you've seen it a dozen times and you know the line is coming, it's still so perfectly delivered and so well done.
It's I would watch his show day after day after day.
Me too. And a great guy, just one of the best people in magic ever.
And backtracking a little bit, you were talking about magicians. They just want to see fool us, fool us. You were
Sure.
on Fool Us.
Yep, I was.
Can you talk about
And
that a
I
little bit? Like you did cartoon, but you didn't.
yeah, exactly. Okay. So the situation, I've talked in other interviews about it, but the situation was that they asked me if I wanted to be on Fool Us, and I said yes. And then they said, the producers, when I'm saying the producers said, we would like to have people do things that are different, not card tricks. We get too many card tricks. So can you submit a few things to us? So I submitted a bunch of things to them, all great ones, really, really good tricks, and they would have fooled Penn and Teller. And then I waited for a response, and then they got back to me about a month before they were going to film, and they said, we'd love to have you on, but we want you to do cartoon.
So no card tricks.
That's right.
No card trick.
Yeah. So I wrote back to him, and I was like, are you sure? Number one, it's a card trick, and you told me you get too many card tricks. And number two, it's been exposed all around the world. It was on Britain's Got Talent. There's exposure YouTube videos everywhere. It just exploded like everybody. If you go to YouTube, you know exactly how it's done.
Right.
Number three, it's 25 years old, and Penn and Teller definitely know it. So, and they wrote back and they said, we would like you to do cartoon. So I could say no, or I could say yes. So I said yes. I mean, why not, right?
Yeah.
Then I got to thinking about it, and I was like, I have, like I said, that was about a month out from it. So I had a little time to figure out, am I just going to go on there and just do cartoon? And that my first thought was yes, because that's easy.
Yeah.
Right? That's easy. I just show up. I don't need anything. I just bring a deck of cards with me, and I am ready to go.
Yeah.
And I get a free trip. I mean, I lived in Las Vegas for many years, but it's fun to visit Las Vegas, not fun to live in Las Vegas.
Right.
So they pay for the trip, and all that, and then and I'd get some nice airtime. The problem is that when I thought about it more, I wasn't really that interested in fooling Penn and Teller, but when I thought about it more, I thought, well, if I just do cartoon, then everybody is going to say, we saw this on Britain's Got Talent, we saw this on America's Got Talent, we saw this on that, and we, all kind of stuff. This is how it's done. So I thought, well, I have to at least fool the audience. I have to fool the viewers into thinking that they're seeing this trick that they've seen before. And if I'm fortunate enough along the way that Penn and Teller don't figure it out, then that's great. So I created this insane method. It's a dumb method to do it. I'm not going to tell you exactly how it works.
It's not practical at all.
It's not practical. Most magicians can kind of figure it out, but I'll tell you that it's also extremly difficult to do. much more difficult than just doing cartoon by far. So I've created this awkward and challenging method, and then I had to figure out how I can make it look like I'm not doing that method, and then I'm actually doing cartoon and do all of the sleight of hand without doing the sleight of hand.
Right.
That is necessary for cartoon, and there's not much to it, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I had to do that. So I didn't feel great about having to do it in such a way, but I was put into a situation where I either do it that way or everybody's going to know that I just did cartoon. So I went on, I did it, and fortunately Penn and Teller thought that the real method I was using was a red herring, and they only saw one moment, and that's okay because that's the hardest moment to hide. And they thought that was a red herring, and they thought that I actually just did the trick. You didn't get to see the whole discussion.
Right, it was
edited down for TV. So in part of what they were saying, that Penn was saying it's a great trick and all that, and then he also said, we know you didn't do it this way, that you were trying to fool us into thinking that you did it that way, and that's actually how I did it. Right?
Right, but you don't see that on TV.
You don't quite see it on TV. You get a little inkling of that's what they said. So in a little way, I feel a little bad because I had to intentionally trick them on method, but I
Right.
had no other option. I had no other option with cartoon. I mean, think about it,
They
right?
wanted you to do cartoon, but that you can buy that
Yeah,
in a magic shop for $15.
that's right. It's kind of like if you were going on and performing nickels to dimes,
Right.
and the producer said, "Fool Penn and Teller with nickels to dimes."
Right.
You could, but you would have to figure out a method that didn't have anything to
Yeah.
do with the other method, and then they would think that there was. It's just that way.
Yeah.
So I was very, very pleased and exceptionally honored by the nice things that Penn said, and very pleased that the alternate method worked and worked really well. And because of it's now been seen by over 2 million people on YouTube. There are a couple of pirated versions of it, and I check in on the comments every once in a while just to see what it's like. And most everybody who's seen it, most of the lay people who've seen it, have no idea how it was done.
Right.
They also don't quite understand the ending, which is good because they don't quite understand what Penn is saying.
Right.
This is the thing that makes me know that it fools a layperson the way that I did it, is that they don't quite understand what Penn is saying, or why, when I show that the cards just have animation on it, why that fooled them. See, that means that the layperson is thinking, well, of course they just have animation on them.
Right.
there shouldn't be anything else there,
what
right?
else would there be, Dan?
Yeah, exactly. So they comment on that. They also comment on the fact that I must have verbally influenced the three people in the audience, or that they were my stooges, and you can't use stooges on that, so it's obviously not the method. So they comment on the wrong thing, and then you'll occasionally have a commenter that says, I thought that this was the trick that I knew all up until the end. Which is good.
Right.
And then every once in a while you'll have somebody that says, "I saw it on Britain's Got Talent."
Yeah,
That's it, right?
wow.
Yeah, well, of course you did. Yeah. All right. Anyway, that's enough. I think enough about that. It was great to get a chance to go on the show, and I was fortunate enough to fool them. And I've got the trophy. It's awesome. It's over in my case over there. Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's my favorite part. Is just having the cool trophy.
Yeah, the big FU, right?
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. If you want to see it, I'll go grab it. But yeah.
I think anyone watching this knows what it looks like. So you created cartoon. You've also created countless other magic, even like with props as small as like a rubber band. How do you get into that creative mindset and go out to create a trick, or do you just like think of an idea and just have to make it? Or can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, as with any creative endeavor, there can be inspiration that can just come to you. And when I get inspired, I nowadays go to the Post-it notes. So I am digging over here, and I'm just gonna show you so that you don't see exactly what's on them. That one and this one and that one and this one and that one. Oh, and then this is a great one. Oh man. So I've got piles and piles and piles of Post-it notes that these are probably within the last 2 weeks or so. Those all get transferred over. They sit there for a while. If they're good enough, they get transferred to an index card and fleshed out a little bit more, and they go into this.
Okay.
This is the brain box index cards, and they are categorized into what? Oh, there it is. And they're categorized into what they're going to be. So that's if they're good enough, they make it to there. But they never get thrown out. Even if they're not good enough to make it into that, they get put into a bin that goes above that. That just they get saved. And I weed through those every year or so, and look at it again. I will throw some out, but never within a year. It's got to be at least a year before I let the idea, kind of gel in my mind. That's inspiration. Inspired, write it down. I hear a song that I want to use. Goes on a Post-it note. It sits there. I'll typically buy it off of iTunes almost right away, or it'll sit there for a little while, and I'll decide, well, am I using that in a show or not? Will I? So same thing. I get inspired for music selection the same way. And then I have to think about it for a bit before I act on it.
Right.
That doesn't always happen, though. Inspiration is something that you can't count on a regular basis if you're a professional. If you're a professional, you have to play with the toys. Okay?
Right.
So if you're a professional, let's say you're a professional painter, you put a blank canvas in front of yourself, you set up a bunch of paints, you grab your paint brushes, and then you paint. That's it.
Right.
You don't know why or what. And it's not always going to work. So same thing with a magician. So as a magician, you have to set up the toys, whatever you like to play with, and other things that maybe you aren't used to, to stretch your boundaries a little bit. If you're a coin magician, grab a deck of cards. Card magician, grab the coins. If you're a coin or card magician, take some handkerchiefs, do anything, right? Piece of rope, whatever, and just play around with it. So all of the rubber band stuff that I came up with was because I was playing with rubber bands.
Right.
I just grabbed them in my hands and twisted them around and tried this and tried that, thinking of concepts that we take for granted in magic, like appearing and vanishing and transpositions and color changes, and then of course obvious ones when it comes to a band or a ring, linking them together.
Right.
So
of course.
So to tell you the truth, that's where I started. The only trick I really, really wanted was a linking rubber bands trick. I invented 6 before I got to that one.
Right.
6 other tricks before I got the one I wanted. Then I kept going. Right? just by playing around with the rubber bands. And I think honestly, I'm probably the first guy that ever did that, because before I did it, there was one book, the original Elastrix on rubber band magic, and there were about 4 good rubber band tricks. That's it. And honestly, 3 of them are great rubber band tricks. They've stood the test of time. So what's come to be known as the Crazy Man's Handcuffs, which is Arthur Sederington's penetrating bands, fabulous trick, right?
That's wonderful.
Yeah. Like I could never have just invented that trick. Think about that. Just that one trick. I'm not the kind of person that would be happy just inventing that trick.
That's true.
I would.
Like if you're playing with rubber bands, why stop there?
Yeah. That's right. Why stop there? Why start there? Why stop there? So he was struck by inspiration. That's it. He was inspired. He did it, and he's done.
Yep.
That's not how you work as a professional creative person. So that's a great one. There's also the jumping rubber band, right? And the broken and restored rubber band. Okay, which is credited to Kuda Bucks and Harry Lorraine, and nobody knows exactly where it came from. Let's say Harry Lorraine, because Harry's an old friend, and he's also well. All right, look, he's probably never going to see this, but if he sees this, I think he already knows that he's obnoxious, and right. So if we don't credit him, he's going to go, "I invented that. It's my trick." Yeah, it's all right, Harry. It's your trick.
If we don't credit this, he will for sure see it.
It's fine, right?
Yeah.
Even if he didn't come up with the origin of it, because the story with Kuda Bucks is that it's an old trick from India with string, and I believe that. Because there are string tricks and rope tricks that predate it that use the same kind of twisting to them. But the fact that Harry put the work into it to figure out how to do it properly with a rubber band, yes, it's his trick. I'll give him that for sure. So those were the 3 major ones, and they were great. But I looked at those and I was like, these are great tricks. How come there aren't more great tricks with rubber bands? So that's what led me to it, was a little bit of I guess there was an opening, there was a place that needed a void that needed to be filled. We have enough card tricks, we have enough coin tricks, enough rope tricks. We have 3 rubber band tricks, and aren't rubber bands pretty much string anyway? Right. So can't we just apply? And that's what I was thinking. Can't we just apply some of the ideas of string to that? But the other thing that inspired me to come up with that and to come up with other tricks is boredom. I'm not doing anything else, right?
True.
I'm not doing anything else. I honestly believe that if people spent less time, especially people in the entertainment industry, people like you and me, people who are creative, if we spend less time absorbing and more time just putting things out there, we would be better at our job, at creating. Now, the other part of that is you can't just throw things out there right up to YouTube and expect them to be good.
Right.
When I say you put them out there, you put them out there on Post-it notes, you figure them out, you design them, like I take all of the time to design everything. Again, you probably can't see all this, but to really take the time to draw it all out, to make sure that it's all exactly the way I want it to be.
Right.
Then you've got to build it, put it together, or learn the moves if it's a sleight of hand trick. Then you can film yourself. Then you look at your film of yourself. Then you wait. You wait. Go on and do something else. And then the next day, look at that same video of yourself. And you're going to probably want to shoot it again.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
Very, very, very few times on the first take will you get anything exactly right. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about the way that I have to plan the Tarbell. The way I plan Tarbell is the way that live television was planned. And actually, episodic television is planned anymore. You have to get it in one take.
Right.
It might be an edited take, but man, is that ever tough to do. It's really, really tough. So what I'm doing is more challenging than what probably any other magician is doing right now. I'm doing episodic television, new shows every week. Yeah. Have to get them in one take. Yeah. Now, that doesn't always work. There's about I'd say maybe a dozen times over the course of 4 years now that we've been doing this that I have had to do a second take, and maybe 3 times that I've had to do a third take to get it right. Yeah. And when I say get it right, it's workable. I'll be the first to be honest on Tarbell that not everything is perfect, but that's okay. It's all workable. It's all there. Most of the stuff that I've performed, if I still do it, I have refined it even further. Mm-hmm. If you were to see those tricks now, you would see how a professional takes that first take, which is good and workable, and turns it into a masterpiece as it evolves.
For example, with the invisible deck, just using that as an example because I feel like everyone at some point does the invisible deck. Mm-hmm. That's the first trick I took to an open mic night, and I just did the exact scripting like it came, and now when I do it, it's very different and it's more me. I use a joke that works once, I'll keep it in there, I'll say something stupid that no one laughs at, and never again.
Yeah, right.
Just keep performing. And you said you have to do it in one take usually. There's very rarely you get a second chance. Mm-hmm. I'll tape all of my open mics, and one will be as good as I want it to be to like put it out there. And I've done so many, and I think I have like 3 videos that I like.
Well, but that's the thing. Yeah. I applaud that because you're very selective about what you want to represent you for a long time. It's okay. It's okay in a live show to not quite be perfect. It's okay.
Yeah, right, but right? Video, that's forever.
But video, you've got to make sure that it is exactly what you want your brand to be represented by when you put a video out for somebody. And and very often that will change. You'll love it this year, you won't like it next year, and that's okay. We grow as artists,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's about all the questions I had prepared, all the talking points I wanted to talk about.
Okay. Sure.
So you said you looked at the Reddit post.
Yeah, you would ask some folks to write in on Reddit to ask some questions, and I thought some of those were pretty interesting. Let's answer those questions for people. I'll start with the first one.
Okay.
The first question that somebody asked, it's a great question, is what my top 5 tricks from Tarbell are.
Yes.
And fortunately, I wasn't just hit with that question because honestly, if you asked me that question and I wasn't prepared for it, I would be able to tell you 2 of them probably, and I would have trouble figuring it out. And the reason is because I've done over 1,000 tricks.
Right.
At this point, in 4 years, well over 1,000, probably about 1,200 to 1,300 tricks at this point. So to try to go back and go, what are the best ones out of all of that? It's really tough, except for the fact that there's one of them that is in my regular show now.
Oh wow!
Only one that I will do if I'm asked to do a show. It goes into my regular show almost all the time. I love it that much, and it's going to be a surprising answer. What the number one is? It is the 20th century silks done with dress socks. So 20th century socks is it's the way when it's back from lesson 30, so it's back quite a bit. But when I was presented with that old classic trick, the 20th century silks, I thought to myself, there's no way I can do that the way that it's always been done, because it's meaningless. It's been done to death by everybody, but I have to do it. I've set myself up with this challenge of doing every trick. How am I going to make that relevant to an audience in any way? So when I found, first of all, I just started thinking about, well, what can I substitute from silk handkerchiefs that would have the same property, or that I can give it the same property. And when I thought of socks, I was like, that is perfect, because I don't have to gimmick them. They're already the right. They have the opening and they hide things in them, and it's perfect, right? So I just have to find the right socks to do it. I went out and I bought some dress socks that have a black border at the top. They're black socks and they have a decorative thing on them, and I bought enough of them. And then you can't tie them together, so I figured, well, I'll just put a safety pin through them and pin them together. This is the creative process that led me to come up with the idea of having two pairs of dress socks. Somebody chooses one pair. They put that pair into a bag over here. I put this pair into a bag over there, and one of their socks vanishes and appears between my other two socks over here. And it's a great trick.
I like
it. And I get to talk about how a sock disappears in the laundry, and where does it go, and it ends up over here, and I get this person to act like a washing machine. It's fun, So that one has made it into my regular show. That's my number one. The number two one is the silk to egg, another classic trick, silk to egg, which is in lesson 19, and it's actually titled in lesson 19, an extraordinary explanation.
That's, yeah.
But it's the standard silk to egg that we've all become familiar with. But what I did to it was I added in a flash paper restoration that goes from the silk to an egg, and also a thumb tip convincer, and a different time for doing all of the switches and stuff like that, by adding in the lighter and the flash paper. So I've actually motivated all the times that I go to my pocket by using a lighter. It's something that nobody else has ever added to it, is trying to figure out, because and that came from what I was talking about before, where I set up all the thing and I think mechanically, how can I get from point A to point B? Well, there's no reason for me to go here to here. I need an object.
Right.
I need an object. What object can I have here? So when I started thinking about it, I'm like, well, I need whatever is going to restore it has to happen at this moment, So I did. So I added all that stuff into it. I turned it into a completely different trick. If you go back into lesson 19 and watch that, watch my performance of it, you'll see what I'm talking about. Where that performance of it is workable. It is not the way that I perform it now. Right. The way I perform it now is hilarious, and shockingly funny. And it is one of the tricks that I would have fooled Penn and Teller with. I could still fool Penn and Teller with it, and they know the trick, but they would be fooled basically. I think they would be able to get around it because methodologically it's similar. It reduces down to the same trick, but it has some nice moments in it that you'd never expect. So that's the number two. Number three is Hen Fetches Surpasso from lesson 51. It's one of the cards across variations. Hen Fetches Surpasso was the most challenging trick for me to read, because I had to read through it at least 3 times before I kind of understood what the method was. Then I had to get out the props and I had to make it before I really understood it. And then I had this epiphany when I was doing it, how genius this thing was. It took me, I'm familiar with magic. It took me that long to even understand what was really going on. An audience has no chance at all with this trick. The way the trick goes down is that you have a spectator who personally seals 10 cards into an envelope and signs their name on it. That's it, right? And then you have another person who takes 10 cards down, and the audience has 2 of them selected. Names are signed on that. Those go into that envelope. It's sealed by that person, and they sign their name on it. And those two cards that are signed end up in the other envelope with the other person's signature on it.
Wow.
That's it. It's unbelievably good. If you read it in the book, like I said, it's in lesson 51, you won't understand it. I defy anybody to understand it on the first read through. Now, honestly, because I've described it to you'll probably kind of understand, but I still think you won't quite get it.
Yeah.
It involves so much more than what I've just said. There are 3 offbeat switches and 2 miswritings of names. Okay, so it's a lot of work, but the work all happens at exactly the right time, and the trick is absolutely amazing. Now, I love that one because it's a great method and it's a great trick, and also because all you need to do is buy some envelopes, and you can do the trick anywhere in the world. Right. Envelopes and a deck of cards, you can do it anywhere in the world, and it allows you to invest it with whatever personality you want. So if you went back and you saw that in the performance, again, you'll see a workable performance. But I have done that. I've done that around the world. I've done it in foreign languages. It's great with an interpreter because I elect one of those people to become the magician. They become the magician, and then the interpreter, and I give them a name, like the amazing so-and-so, whatever their name is. And then I say, the very impressive such and such, and then the not so bad, all of those things. As it progresses, right? So the interpreter gets to say all those jokes, and the audience gets to laugh, and then finally at the end of it, the trick works. Right. This person gets all the applause and has no idea how it happened.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And gets to keep everything. The deck of cards, the envelopes, everything, and there's no clue. There's no clue to anything. It's great, great trick. So that's Surpasso. The next one after that is the first big illusion build that I did, which is kind of a time machine transposition thing that was pretty cool. And that was from lesson 33. It's a variation on what's called Who and Which. And Who and Which is just a standard person switch using an extra body double for one of the people. But the way that I've designed it shows you what you can do with that simple core concept. So that's a good one to look at. And then the number 5 out of the top 5, at least currently, is Faux's Cut and Restored Handkerchief. Okay. And I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's the best handkerchief trick ever invented. That's actually coming out in lesson 89, so people won't see that for another month or so from the point of this one. So lesson 89, look for Faux's Cut and Restored Handkerchief. It's a great, great trick. And it's one that I was doing long before Tarbell. When I first learned it, I've been doing that trick for 30 years or something, and it's been in a few of my shows. It was in my first Penguin Live lecture. It's where I have Jen run in, and she cuts the handkerchief in half, and then she says, you're a magician, you restore it, and then I do. So it's a great trick. It's a good one to know. And then I just want to give honorable mention to Grant's $1 Million Mystery from lesson 37. Grant's $1 Million Mystery, best bill trick, money trick ever invented. And then also to the way that I did the Blindfold Drive for lesson 77. A lot of great lessons in that whole blindfold lesson. But the drive in particular, because I'm the first magician that I know of, at least, who performed the Blindfold Drive during a live stage show. So, right?
Right.
So what I did is I get 2 people up from the audience, and I have a cameraman follow me out to the car, and the audience gets to see video of me doing the Blindfold Drive with those 2 people from the audience, and then I bring them back and go back into the audience. Yeah.
That's interesting. Doing that live.
Yeah. So another question.
Well, first I want to give credit to Paintaker11 from Reddit for that question.
Yeah.
I have a follow-up question on that real quick, if you don't mind. You said early on, lesson 30, there was a trick that you were having, not necessarily trouble with it, but...
the 20th Century Silk is from lesson 30. Right. Yeah. Yep. So the question is...
Yeah, is there any point when you were doing this Tarbell adventure that you just thought, oh no?
Yeah, many. just about every lesson, there is a challenge. And that's because most magicians focus on the method of a trick, and not whether the trick is any good, not whether it's entertaining, and not whether even whether it fools somebody isn't the most important thing. A lot of magicians think that just because it's a clever method, it's good because it's going to fool other magicians, because other magicians are familiar with the other method. That doesn't necessarily improve a trick by changing the method. It's the same trick.
Right.
You know? So many times I have found myself reading something and saying, this would be a good trick if you just did the original method, you know? But because I have set myself up to perform every trick, I can't always go back to the original method. What I have to do is I have to figure out why this method will allow me something that the other one doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't do that. So I'm honest when I teach it. I'll say, yeah, I'm using this method, but this isn't the best method for the trick, and it makes no difference to the audience, and you're better off using this other method. I just went through some coin backclip stuff that is coming out next month. That it's a better method to use the Downs palm for most of it, but I still use the backclip method just to show what it was. Right. Now, for some things, that backclip method was perfect. There was a couple of coin switches where it's perfect. You wouldn't do them with Downs palm because it gets in the way. But for some of the other stuff, it's better to use an alternate thing. That happens all the time. And then the other thing that happens is that a trick is just too it doesn't mean anything. It's just nothing. Just something disappears, or something like that. Or, just whatever it is. It's too simple.
No motivation, really.
No motivation. The core of the trick is just too simple. Those are a challenge because I just the way I am, I have to figure out how to routine those into something. It can't stand on its own. So that becomes a problem for me, because how do I take a trick and routine it into something else without going too far away from what the original one was, and putting in way too much effort on something that is just a tiny little trick, right? So sometimes that's a huge challenge. Like one of the lessons was on knots, penetrating off of a rope, silks and ropes. I can't remember what the lesson was, but that thing. So I took almost all of those. I took 5 or 6 of those, and I put them all in a routine together. And then that had a really good meaning. And I did it with my necktie, and it was, anybody that's following it probably saw that one. And if they haven't, it's a great one to see how you can take simple 1-moment tricks and turn them into something else, And then the other ones are always the classics, billiard balls, linking rings, and anything like that, right? How do you make them new or interesting? So I'm always challenged with those. And when I did billiard balls, for example, I came up with, I believe, 4 different new routines for billiard balls. When I did the original Miser's Dream, Small Miser's Dream, brand new original thing, adding some new methods. I'm always trying to push it as far as I can to show what's possible. I think it's important to teach that kind of thinking to magicians, so that you don't just pick up a trick off the shelf and do it like you've seen everybody do it. And you talked about the invisible deck that way. Yes, start with it. Start with the core of it, because it's really good. That's why it's become a classic. It's a classic for a reason. You can just pick it up and do it, and an audience will love it. But what else can you do with it? Right. how can you alter it? Right? Yeah. So the answer to your question is, just about every other trick has been a huge challenge.
Right.
Yeah.
I like you just said, make the trick your own. Start with it how it is, and then make it your own. I've seen so many magicians come out. They draw a ball on a piece of paper, and then, oh man, it's Kevin James.
Yeah.
What is it, Bolorama?
Yep.
And I've never seen that done a different way. But then one day I saw somebody, they switched the bowling ball for a balloon, and then they popped it. And
yeah, it's great. Just in addition to it, and you saw, you just commented on Dave Kaplan's lecture. David Kaplan does some of the best stuff with a bowling ball I've ever seen, and he is not doing Kevin James' trick. Right. He's thinking about the bowling ball. What makes the bowling ball interesting, and how can I use it in a different way? Yeah. Right. And that's great. You can start somewhere. You can say, wow, that's a good trick. But, what else can be done with it? And I always think a great place to start is just to substitute the object. Why does it have to be a bowling ball? Doesn't. Yep. Bowling ball is a great choice. But there could be other things that you could put in there that could be just as good or better. You might come up with something better, right?
Murray talked about that doing his whole CD act. He like, I can do a Tenkai poem with a CD.
Yep.
Okay, there you go.
That's right. There you go. It changes the whole thing. I mean, his early years, he gained a lot of recognition and fame just from that simple idea of using CDs instead of cards or jumbo coins. Just let's do something that looks different, that's more today.
Right, which is just a really fun idea, and I think anybody could do that. You just change the object and you have a completely new thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Getting back to Reddit, Mr. E Magic, if you could only perform one effect, what would it be?
It's a simple one. It's Starkel. Starkel, and shouldn't be a surprise or a shock to anybody. That is, the best trick that I've ever invented, the best script that I've ever come up with. It has been in every one of my shows. Like, it's not in the Tarbell shows because I do them every single week, but anytime that I need a little extra time on stage with the Tarbell shows, boom, that's my go-to. It is the closer for every one of my shows out in the public, anywhere that I go to. It is the one that I do impromptu, no matter where I am. If somebody wants to see some magic, it's gotten me so many bookings. It stood the test of time. I came up with the concept when I was 14, so it's been a long time, which I'm not going to tell you how long, but I'd say about 140 years or so that I've been doing that trick. Yes, it's the best. If I implore everyone out there, if you haven't learned Starkel, just go to penguinmagic.com, look it up. It's Starcle, like star and circle smooshed together. It is a portmanteau word. So Starkel. I think they're still only charging $10 for it. You get the best video instruction. It's so good. It sounds like I'm doing a commercial, but what I'm doing is I'm actually saving you, time and effort to find this thing and learn it and love it, and you will. So that without a doubt, that's the one.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's a great answer. Can't argue with any of that.
Yeah, right.
Ooh, this is a hard name. P44V9N.
Yeah, and he's got a lot of questions, doesn't he?
I
see him.
Favorite moment from a Penguin Live lecture?
My favorite moment from a Penguin Live lecture is, I've said this before, Chris Philpott with the Penguin. So Chris Philpott comes on, and he does a card trick. The card vanishes. And he had me select a card, and just from a spread of cards, just think of a card, and I think of it, and then it vanishes, right? And then he says, the card you're thinking of is inside the penguin, and we've got the stuffed penguin that's sitting there, and I laugh and I go, yeah, sure it is, right? It's gonna be one of those things where you say it's inside the stuffed penguin, and now it's in my pocket, and now it flies around the room, and it ends up folded inside your shoe or something like that. But no, he stops there. He just says it's inside the penguin, and he hands me a knife. Right? I'm holding this knife, and he's like, cut open the penguin's head. I actually, using my own money, bought the penguin because I was hosting the Penguin Live lectures, and I wanted to have a penguin for that. So I bought, and it's a beautiful one of those big monarch penguins. Right. It's nice. So I'm like, I'm not cutting open this penguin. And he's like, no, come on, cut open the penguin's head. And he goes, right there. And I cut it open, and there's the card folded up inside the penguin's head that I was thinking of.
That's amazing.
It's great. It's great. He went to all of the effort to buy the identical penguin that I had purchased for the thing, gimmick it all up so that it could produce any one of the cards that I would think of, and then switch the penguins so I didn't know that I was working with the one that he bought. My favorite, because that's the time and effort thing that it takes, and it's smart, and it's using an icon, and it's using something that I care about and right there close to me. So yeah, he went the extra mile on that. Really, really good.
Second question, best story about anything behind the scenes that happened?
Yeah. Okay. So this is a best story about a tragedy that was avoided that nobody knew about. I haven't spoken about this very often, very much, but back when we used to do them live for real, before it was just a name, or we recorded them live, and we switched over to that format because it gives the viewer more content than what we were doing before. What we were doing before, all you got to see was a lecture that was put together and filmed live. Whatever happened, and that's all fine. I like that, but that isn't what we're looking for. Mm-hmm. Now we get full performances in front of an audience, and we get to edit those in,
Right.
And if there's any dead time in the lecture, we try to take as much of that out. Like, like if somebody has to set up for the next trick, we can take that part out. We still edit it so it feels live, because it is. We're still filming it live, right? But back when we were actually doing it live and there was a countdown clock, we had a countdown clock to when we would broadcast, like, boom, we have to hit this. So I remember who it was. It was Jeff Williams was in for the lecture. And he's a great guy, very funny, wonderful entertainer. And the countdown clock is running. And somebody in our audience was watching the countdown clock. And that person had an epileptic seizure because of the way that the leader clock was going, the flicker of the clock. They started to have a seizure. Okay. And this was, I believe, within 30 seconds. Like I was standing on the stage ready to deliver the opening as the clock was counting down. And I saw this person just kind of like nodding off like this. And I thought they were just going to sleep, like at the beginning of the show. But then they started shaking. And fortunately, my girlfriend Jen was there, and she was immediately on it. She says, "That guy's having a seizure. Call 911. The clock's going, right?" And I said, we can't go live. So I just said, cut it. I said, cut it, right? So we called the emergency services, and they got in there. They brought an ambulance in. They got the guy. They rushed him off to the hospital. They got him stabilized, and he's fine. He's fine. He's fine to this day. Like, his life was saved because of Jen's quick actions and everybody else's quick actions. Right. So for people that remember Jeff Williams' lecture, it started about a half an hour late. Nobody knew why. It was, as far as they knew, it was technical difficulties. But it was actually a life and death situation that happened just before we broadcast the thing. And to his credit, Jeff Williams was fantastic. Still very, very entertaining. And this is the thing. After the guy left, we didn't start the lecture until we knew that he was stabilized and fine, which is why it took, a half an hour to know that. As soon as we got word back, Jeff was great. He was with the audience. He was joking around with them and that kind of stuff, getting them back into the right mood. As soon as we got everybody settled and back in the right mood, then we went live with the lecture. Yeah. You never know what's going to happen when you're doing it live, right? And I'll tell you, and see, that's the thing. That's one of the reasons. It's one of the reasons that I had when we decided to change the format. I was like, I never want to have to deal with that ever again. Yeah. And you never know what's going to happen. You don't know. So there have been a couple of times we still, like I said, we record it live, but there have been a couple of times where we can just say, hey, let's hold off 5 minutes. Yeah. Let's just wait 5 minutes for whatever the reason is. We're not quite happy about this thing. Let's wait 5 minutes and then record it. It's so much better than being stuck with an emergency that happening in the thing. Hopefully we'll never have something so potentially tragic ever happen again. Everybody's okay, right? Yep.
And to get back to his last question,
sure.
It just says, meeting such a huge variety of magicians, ?
Yeah, and I believe that's
favorite moment, maybe?
Favorite moment meeting them. Yeah, I think it goes back to that. So, yep. So the favorite moment meeting a huge variety of magicians. I love everybody that's come in. Honestly, they all bring something interesting to it. But and this isn't necessarily meeting a magician that's come in, but a lot of my favorite moments are when people that I know really well come and do their lectures. Because honestly, as a professional in this business, my friends and we see each other maybe every 10 years or so.
Right.
Because we're so busy. We're so busy traveling around the world. But we're instantly still great, the best friends ever. So one of those occasions was when Doc Hilford came in to do his lecture. Doc is a great old friend, and honestly, we've been friends now for a long, long time, and have probably only ever spent maybe 6 times together at various places in the world over the course of 2 or 3 hours. So we've known each other for a long, long time, and I've maybe spent 18 hours in his presence, right? And that's the same for me with like Sean Farquhar and Johnny Ace Palmer, and it goes on and on. All these people who are really, really great friends of mine. But when Doc Hilford came in, we had a terrific time at his lecture. It was fantastic. If you know Doc, everything Doc does is fantastic and well thought out and well scripted. But after the lecture, we went out to the local bar to have pizza and drinks, and they have karaoke night. on the night. So we go out and they have karaoke night that night. And my favorite moment is Doc Hilford and I were singing Blue Oyster Cult's "Don't Fear the Reaper" together.
That's wonderful.
For karaoke. Yeah.
That's awesome.
We have a little bit of video, which I don't know how much of it is ever made public. I know a little bit was put up on Facebook maybe 3 years ago or something like that. But it was such a great night. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, here's a question about Starkel. From Dastokes, what made you come up with Starkel, and how did you manage to figure it out?
I can make this really kind of brief. The basic idea of Starkel came from seeing Gene Anderson perform Ken Brooks' Squircle. Squircle, again, another portmanteau word, square and circle, is a gimmicked version with a newspaper, where you've got a newspaper folded and you cut out a circular hole, a half circle, and when you unfold it, it transforms visibly into a square. Mm-hmm. So it's a really neat little trick, but you got to gimmick up the paper and all that kind of stuff. And I was thinking to myself, I'd like to come up with a way to do it ungimmicked. I obviously can't use the circle and the square. I have to come up with something else. Mm-hmm. So I also knew how to fold a piece of paper and with one cut make a star. So I thought to myself, and that's an old paper cutting thing, just something I happen to know. Right. So I thought to myself, well, I can start with that, because the idea of making one cut is good, but what can I transform that single cut into? So a star actually has 10 sides. So 5 points, each of 2 sides coming up to it. So it has 10 equal length sides and equal angles on those sides. So if you just transpose those, I'm also a kind of a math geek. I love geometry and topology and all that other kind of stuff. So all of that comes together. All those disciplines work together. But if you were just to enlarge those out until they form a decagon, you have what approximates a circle made out of 10 sides. So I knew, and this was all in my head, while I'm watching Gene Anderson, it all comes to me. I work it all out in my head. I know that there is a line between those 2 things that I need to fold one extra fold to do it. Mm-hmm. So when I got home, and this is when I was a kid, like I said, I was 14 years old. So when I get home, I fold up a piece of paper to make a star, and then I mark where it is, and I mark the line that would make a decagon, and I go, oh, that's a 45-degree angle. Boom, fold it between that, make a cut, open the thing up, and go, that's a new trick. That's how it worked for me in that case. But it sounds fast. It wasn't that fast, because the convention that I'm at was the Magi Fest. That's a big convention we have here in Columbus every year. And I grew up 2 hours from here, so that was my hometown convention, was that big convention. So that's where I saw it. And I thought about it the whole convention, but I didn't get a chance to fold pieces of paper or anything like that, because I'm off doing other events and I'm jamming with everybody. So it wasn't until a couple of days later that I get home, then I remember it, and I'm like, I'd try that. All of this stuff took a long time. Plus, it was all the disciplines that I was interested in. For anybody else, if you're not interested in those same things, if you don't know a lot about topology and geometry, if you don't know how to cut a star from a single piece of paper, if you never studied the history of paper folding, if you weren't into origami, it wouldn't come together for you. So what I'm trying to get to is be as interested in as many things as you can that you really, really do care about, and just collect all of this knowledge. You may never use most of it, but every once in a while, something will come together and you'll go, yeah, that fits with this, with that. And you will come up with something that nobody else could have, because nobody else is interested in the same way that you are. Mm. So that's the Starkel creation story.
I like that story. That's a good story. Yep. From Daniel RMK, what motivates you to keep performing magic?
Oh, all the money and fame. No. Because if it was that, I would have gotten out of this business a long time ago. It's a really good business to make a nice living at, and the kind of recognition that I've gotten and the amount of money that I've been able to make is good. It's good, right? But I will never be the most famous magician in the world. I will never be the wealthiest magician in the world. But what I will be is very, very happy pleased with the kind of expression that I've given, the artistic expression, how I have channeled magic through me to hopefully make an audience experience a sense of wonder and really think about their world in ways that they haven't thought about and have a great time while they're doing it. So for me, it's about, this is the art that I use to express myself. It is where every one of my disciplines comes together, where I am able to take my graphic design, my artistic design, my theater training, my scripting, like I said, my love of mathematics, movies, music, everything that I love can come together, and then I can share that with other people. That's what keeps me going. I'm as much a part of magic is a part of me.
That's awesome. From Don't Tread 76, what up-and-coming magicians are you most impressed with?
I'm most impressed with this magician. What's his name? Don't Tread 76. That's the guy.
Oh yeah, I've heard of him. He's really good.
Really good. Yeah. Keep up the good work. Right? Okay. Now look. All right. It's an unfair question, and you know that.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
It's unfair in a number of reasons. I'm not going to single anybody out. I know you would want me to single somebody out, but I'm not going to. But also, I can't. The reason I can't is because I have been so busy doing what I'm doing that I haven't had a chance to see many of the young magicians. I occasionally hear some names that they're appearing on America's Got Talent or doing great work over here like that. I don't even have time to watch America's Got Talent. Unless I happen to be at a place where you are working, I won't see you. That's just the way it is. So I don't know most of the younger magicians now. I'll meet a lot of them at conventions, and they might show me one trick or something like that. I will tell you that there are a ton of impressive magicians out there. There really, really are. I'm seeing better work nowadays than I've ever seen in the past, and I've been around long enough to see all of the greats. I've seen all of the greats that you know when they started. So I mean, Joe Rindfleisch.
Right.
He used to be an up-and-coming magician.
Right.
Right? I inspired him with rubber band tricks, and I meet him, and he's just a kid, and he's doing rubber band tricks, and now he is the go-to guy, and he should be, right? So it's that kind of stuff that I have seen happen over and over and over and over and over again, where somebody gets inspired to do really great work, and then all of a sudden, they're recognized as a name in magic. It happened to me. I used to be an up-and-coming magician. When I first started, people were like, this kid is doing this crazy stuff. And then all of a sudden I'm doing other crazy stuff. And then eventually, after 10 years of doing crazy stuff and being kind of a murmur in the magic world, I come up with cartoon, and now they're like, oh, well, that's the guy that invented cartoon. You forget about all the stuff that came before.
Right.
And now I've set a mark for myself that I have to exceed over and over and over again. I've been fortunate that my creativity doesn't stop. And it's because I work like a professional, like I said. So for somebody else, that might have been the pinnacle of their career and the end of their career. For me, it was just another signpost along the way. The up-and-coming magicians that I've become most familiar with are the guys that work on our crew. So you might not think of them as up-and-coming magicians anymore because they have established themselves. A guy who's fantastic and continues to produce fantastic work, Nicholas Lawrence. And you know that we collaborated on the Hover Card Plus, on the reintroduction of that. He's just released another thing called In the Clear, which is unbelievable effect. And he's got more. He shows me things just about every week. He's doing something, and I'm like, that's the best thing I've seen. Again, this is the best thing I've seen again. And they're all so good and so marketable, and so keep your eye on him because he has a stellar career in front of him. And then another guy is Brandon Gerald, Brandon Gerald, who is now going by the stage name Presto, which I absolutely love. It works perfect for him. He appears on our show every once in a while, and every once in a while you'll see him pitching one of the tricks. He's absolutely fantastic. So if you're not familiar with him, look him up, Brandon Gerald Presto, and you'll see that he's a fabulous magician, and he's kind of poised to really become extremely well known all around the world. So I'm just mentioning those two guys just because I work very closely with them, and they do fantastic work. Now everybody else that's on our crew, I don't want to slight Nicola Capo, but Nicola Capo is he's again a fantastic performer, comes up with amazing and original stuff, but it seems kind of weird to call him an up and coming magician when he's already put in all the hard work, already done it, and already established himself. The guy already is a magic star, right? So I can't say that he's one of my favorite up and coming magicians. He's one of my favorite current star magicians, right? So anyway, so that's it. That's the rundown. And then, like I said, there are some other amazing people I can't single out just because I'm not familiar with all of them. And if I single them out, I'm going to be missing somebody I haven't seen yet.
Right. And to that point, I just want to say that no matter who you are, even if you think you're a no-name, like 3 people have heard of you, whatever it is, if you're performing, good on you.
Oh, absolutely. It's the only way that you can become really, really good is to go out there and do it. Do it as much as you possibly can, It's the only way you're going to know what you're capable of.
Exactly. And the last question on Reddit is from user Gigantic. What's something that you believe about magic that other magicians might disagree with?
That quick and visual magic will ruin your career. That's what I believe. If all you're doing is quick visual magic, that's it. You've got something, you pass your hand in front of it and it changes to something else, or you shake it and it's now different, or bam, something appears or it vanishes. It's going to ruin your career. You can use it. You can use it to get a few hits on Facebook and YouTube and social media and all that kind of stuff, and people will look at it. But the problem is it makes you forgettable. The trick's great. It's almost too good because people want to watch it again and again and again to try to figure out that one trick, but they don't care who's doing it. Right. They don't care about you. So a lot of magicians would disagree with the quick and visual thing. Most magicians, especially young magicians, want all of their tricks to be quick and visual. And I know the reason behind that, because it's hard to actually make something interesting.
Yeah.
It's hard to relate to people. It's hard to say, "Hi, my name is Dan Harlan, and I want to show you something really cool that you're not going to believe." Now, when I was over in this city and I found this thing, it was on the street, but whatever you're going to say, that's hard to do, right? So it's easier just to go, "Hey, check this out." Bam. All right, see you next time, guys.
Yeah.
that's easier, right?
Yeah.
But that makes you forgettable as a person. If you're going to develop a career and become somebody and be a recognized name and face in any entertainment, you are what's important, not what you do. So temper your enthusiasm about quick and visual. And like I said, try to balance the theater and the magic together. It's a dance. It's not easy. Not everybody does it the same way. That's what makes it great. It's your expression, but figure out what your expression of the idea is. Right. And more important than that, focus on yourself. Okay? Might seem like it's selfish or self-centered, but it's not. The more you focus on yourself, the more of yourself you can give to others. The more you understand about who you are, what you have to say, what your expressions and your likes and dislikes are. Right. That's the stuff that will matter to people. That's the stuff you give to people, instead of trying just to take their attention for a second. So give more than you take.
Yep. And I think personally I had to learn that short magic is not always good. Quick visual is good for Instagram, like you said, good for Facebook, good for getting the hits. But back to, like I told you, I took the invisible deck out to the open mic. I think I had like 5 minutes that I was allowed. think I did the invisible deck in like 45 seconds, which you shouldn't.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Like, what's
Yeah,
the card? It's right here.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The invisible deck, you can legitimately do it in under 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And it's a great trick.
Yeah.
It's a great trick. It's not necessarily a visual trick, although honestly, I used to do a visual version of it, which is just you have the. I'm just going to tell it to you. So you guys can do this. You know, put this in your social media. This is a great way to do the invisible deck. You spread the cards. And you say, think of one of those cards. You close them. You give the deck a shake. The card on the face changes. You say, what I've done is I've cut the deck and turned your card face down. What card were you thinking of? They name it. You spread it. It's face down. That's how you do it quick and visual. The invisible deck takes very little time to do it. It's outside of the box. Nobody's seen it that way. It's not a good, I mean, it's a good trick, but it's not good for you.
It's not the best.
It strips everything away from it that an audience enjoys.
Right.
Where is the enjoyment in that? It's a great trick, but where is the enjoyment in that? The only enjoyment is the fact that I know the method. That's it. And if I'm the only one enjoying it, then why am I bothering to show it to anybody else, right? Yeah. So the invisible deck as written, it's a great script. Every bit of it, every little thing that you think is hackneyed and old still plays solid. Yeah. But you can then develop it more and more and more and make it your own, you know? Yeah, just like we were talking about the whole time. So yes, so I say that if you're relying on the quick and the visual, you're not actually getting anything across to an audience. They are not caring at all about you, and if they don't care about you, you're doing a disservice to yourself.
And then just one last question before I thank you for your time. Is there anything you want to say to like just aspiring magicians? Any advice you want to give? Anything you've learned over the years? Just any one thing?
Wow. Well, we have said a lot. I think that's very, very important to focus on. It's a lot of food for thought. I don't want to overload anybody's mind with too much more. What I will say, though, is this. If you listen to people like me that have done it and have done it well, that are still enjoying it, by the way. I'm not one of those bitter old guys that that'll tell you, hey, Sonny, you're doing that wrong. No, I think you're doing it right. I just want you to understand, enjoy it, do it better, let your audience enjoy it. So if you listen to guys like me that have been doing it for a long time and are still really, really having fun doing it, I think you'll pick up this advice, and you will do it for a long time and have fun doing it. If you don't listen to guys like me, you're going to have a tougher time in this business. It is not easy. It's not easy to do this for a long time. It's not easy to have fun doing it for a long time. There will be difficult times, but you can learn a lot from guys that have been there, that are still here, that are still doing it. That's it.
I think the best piece of advice I've gotten was from Piff. And I asked him any one piece of advice you could give, and he just said, if you don't love it, just stop.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and it's true. And I mentioned a little bit earlier that if you can imagine yourself doing something else and having a better time, that's the thing you should do. That whatever you can imagine yourself doing and having a better time. And you probably have lots of options. If you're an interesting and creative person, you can do other things. Magic is a fantastic hobby. It's also a fantastic part-time profession. But man, a full-time profession, it's challenging every single day. So be aware of that, right?
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking your time to come on my little show.
You are very welcome. It was a pleasure meeting you and a pleasure talking to you. And thank you again for inviting me.
Yes. Everybody, Dan Harlan, you can find him all over Penguin Magic.